Are Ulster and Connacht our new Irish rugby overlords? Maybe. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Interpro Show, your home for all things Irish rugby across the professional and amateur, men's and women's game. And joining me tonight, almost on my lonesome, but not quite, we have Leinster fan David Gurriel. If you can't guess, if you are watching a video, he does have the Leinster hat on, so that'll help you distinguish as well as the blue background. David, a cracking weekend of rugby. Not every province will be as happy as the rest, but in general, a pretty decent weekend.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. 3 from 4. Some of us definitely more happier with our performances than others, even among the ultimate victors. But no, it gives it gives us all something to watch next weekend if we're so inclined, and if we're not, it's never a bad thing to take some time off and maybe enjoy a bit of golf.
See, that's how you know he's trying to sweeten me up here by mentioning the golf good and early because he knows well that's exactly what my Sunday is going to be. I've already mentioned it on a different podcast. We'll talk about that later on. But yeah, no, it was 3 from 4 and at three like it's just on the outset, like before we get into it in detail, like four very different games. Like the Leinster game could not be more open. The Ulster game was obviously in a storm Dave, I'm pretty sure it was actually. The Connacht game was kind of a grind until it wasn't, and the Sharks fell away. And the Munster game was a tale of two halves, so very very different. But we will start with Leinster on Easter Sunday as they put clear of Edinburgh to advance to. I don't know if you checked the notes. Do you want to guess what straight quarter-final appearance this is in a row for Leinster, David?
Uh, it's got to be at least ninth or 10th. Higher
Correct.
than
It
that.
is it is 10th. It is 10 in a
10th.
row.
There we
They
go.
did have, I don't know if you counted, they did have one round of 16 walkover during the COVID years where they got a bye past Toulon, but we'll let them off with that one. But it's
Yeah.
a high scoring 31 win over the Scottish side. And David, you were there, you were in
Yeah.
attendance. This is how you spent your Easter Sunday evening. Good crowd, good atmosphere, good game of rugby, but not the best for the nerves. That's starting to become a trend with Leinster, as we said before.
Yeah, it was utterly bizarre. Like it was a great night. There was a lot bigger crowd there than I think I was initially fearing. I'd say we got the bones of 25,000, which is not bad for the day that was in it. And they were well rewarded with the weather. It was, it turned very nice, kind of ideal conditions for the two teams involved to play a bit of proper rugby. And yeah, it's become a horrifying thing that multiple times I've watched Leinster play in that stadium, score tries at the start, and you think the game is going to go one way, and then very quickly you have to reevaluate that assessment. And yeah, like I thought, we were on out 2 tries very early on. They were nice tries as well. It wasn't a grind. Nice scores. Harryburn took his conversions quite well. It seemed pretty positive. There was a small thing in the back of my head saying this can't continue forever. There's always going to be a purple patch. Something has to give. There's going to be a back and forth. But while, gather your rosebuds while you may, we should score as much as we can. So when they do come back, we build ourselves a nice little cushion. I don't think I could have predicted what happened. That first half is still, it's such a bizarre um 40 minutes of rugby because if you just look at the scoreline, it was 28-26 at half time. That makes it look like a really high scoring, really tightly contested game. I would argue that that's not really what it was. Leinster had the game almost entirely their own way. They were playing some very nice attacking rugby, and kind of a departure from the way that we've played for a lot of the season. A lot of carrying the ball very close to the line, a lot of very quick last minute passes. Um, you know, all there were 4 tries scored in that half. I think all 4 of them were scored by our back three. There were two Tommy O'Brien, one Jimmy O'Brien, and one Hugo Keenan. Or certainly Tommy O'Brien ended up scoring two, but I know all 3 of the back line um, scored. And I just it like you know from that side it was brilliant. But going in the opposite direction, um, we had this response, and it like I had we actually had a discussion with some other Leinster supporters over the weekend that this 26-0 represented, you know, that our defense was still not where we wanted it to be. Last season defense was such a big thing for Leinster. Um, 2 seasons ago to the last season, we have the number of points we conceded. Going into this season, we conceded 30% of the points we in the first three games as we did last season. So our defense has definitely suffered this season. But I'd almost argue that the scoreline of this game didn't wasn't even reflective of that because three of those four tries, the two of them were straight intercepts, and one was a bounce loose, and the ball was collected, and Edinburgh ran away. But you could reasonably argue that Leinster were almost entirely responsible for seven of the eight tries. Just three of them were going in the wrong direction. Credit to Edinburgh, they attacked the line very closely. They stayed very sharp. Certainly for there was one of the intercepts, Jamie Osborne pass was picked off. They were clearly cognizant of what we were doing, and they were smart enough to get themselves in the right positions to pick those passes off. But it was really, really frustrating to watch because Leinster would score and then immediately give Edinburgh a score back. And then they score again and then immediately get a score back. The one try that Edinburgh kind of manufactured themselves was the Ross Thompson try up the right hand side. First phase off a scrum. It was a great run by Thompson, but like Jefferson Gibson Park and Hugh Keane falling off tackles would be really annoyed by that one. And so I think in those four tries in that first half, I don't think there was a single phase. I think they were all either there was intercepts and the Ross Thompson was right off the back of the scrum. So there wasn't a phase in across all of those. It was just run-ins, which is very uncommon. But going in the opposite direction, Leinster's attack was good. They scored four really nice tries. And if you just looked at those in isolation, and we said if we could tighten it up in the second half, it'd be great. And to Leinster's credit, they did. Now at the start of the half, it was nervy because um, you know it Edinburgh don't always get a lot of plaudits, and to be fair, they have a habit of selling themselves well short. But Darcy Graham is a very good rugby player, and his chip over the top and chase through was a deserved score to put Edinburgh ahead. And at that point, you really felt okay. You need to lock it down. You need to get it together. And to Leicester's credit, they did. That was the only try they conceded in the second half. They locked back in. There were some excellent scores. Tom Clarkson just showing phenomenal strength for his finish. Josh Van der Fleer eventually being rewarded, and then Ricky Ioane getting his in the corner. I did feel happy for the guy. He's not always the most popular player in Leinster, but that's the kind of thing he was brought in to do, and he finally got the chance to do it. So, that final scoreline, 49-31, the game was worth all of those tries. It was a little bit more tense, but it was just weird because it didn't feel like Edinburgh applied massive pressure and we just about kept ahead. It felt like we were the architects of our own destruction and then ultimately our own success. So, I think at the time I was very frustrated and I was very nervy, but looking back on it, I think the fact that we tidied up in the second half, it means we can take a bit more of the positives, and the positives were the attack, and the attack was good. It was very good. It was some proper good passes, scoring on the wings, at the end of good phase play. And he didn't win player of the match, but hats off to Harry Byrne because that was 7 out of 7 off the tee, and at least five of them were from the touchline. So that was a really good one for him, and in a position that Leinster are kind of in flux in and not 100% sure where we're going to settle on. I think it's pretty clear, like if he's fit, he's going to start the next few games anyway. So a nervy game, but ultimately I think we can take general positives out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I'd agree with a lot of that. I will say, like, Harry Byrne, I did think had an excellent game. I thought Gibson Park was good. He'll be disappointed to have let Ross Thompson pass because Gibson Park is a very good defensive nine. And that was probably the only thing that if I was to really find fault in Leinster, like I know the top scorer in provincial games this weekend was Mr. Intercept with five tries, between Leinster and Munster. But just that kind of that level of intensity, and it's not really something that we talk about a lot at this stage of the season, but I think, maybe I listened to too many GA podcasts this week with the league campaigns, but there is just that intensity when you hit Cup rugby of just that 100% effort. And we'll get onto a Munster in a few minutes where they have certainly lacked. Like, when was the last time you seen Leinster players not tracking back when, like, the first intercept try was run in? Like, that to me was a little bit galling. And even like the Thompson one, I think Keenan does very well to try and haul down Darcy Graham for that try, but the Thompson one, just looked a bit passive and a little bit flat. And excuse me, I think Rob Kearney was kind of saying, like, oh, we weren't arrogant. I expected Leinster to win by this much, and this, that, and the other. But it's like, and it's not arrogance, but at the same time, just that level of intent, that level of intensity, just didn't seem to be there from Leinster. And I know it can feel like a lot of the time we just kind of nitpick, but they are held to a very high standard because this was a team with, what was it, 14 Irish internationals and an All Black or something like that in the starting side. Like this was an incredibly stacked 23, and they weren't at their best. And unfortunately for them, they get held to the high standards of say last year, where they scored something like 110 points across two games without conceding in the early knockout stages. And granted, some of that was on Glasgow and Quins for being very very poor. But if we're going to say that about the intensity and all that, Leinster's attacking game was probably as good as we've seen it all season. I did find. I thought Harry Byrne. It's not just his athleticism; he just has a little bit more composure when he's under pressure than say Sam Prendergast or even Kieran Frawley in terms of phase to phase. That's probably the big complaint about Frawley is that he hasn't got the reps. So phase to phase, he can be a little bit, you know, up and down. He was just very consistent. I do think this was Rico Ioane's best game in a Leinster shirt. I think, big fan of Ian Madigan. I wouldn't have given Tommy O'Brien man the match. He was very good. He did
Mm.
have two very easy run-ins, to be fair to the guy. I think other guys had to work a little bit harder for their scores or for his score as well at that. But it was definitely an awful lot better on the attacking side of the ball from Leinster. And I do think, and we'll probably get onto a little bit later with the Sale game, as much as you can kind of look at Sale and say that they do have certain attributes that they can get at Leinster, like the scrum, potentially, like that back row being so defensive minded and a 10 who can just kick the leather off the ball. If Leinster attack with the same purpose, and it's a weird one. I'd almost say that Leinster attacked with the purpose that we've wanted from them, but their defense lacked that bit of purpose and intensity that it's had all season, and that's why it dropped off a tiny bit. It's very hard to balance both. That's the thing. It's very hard to be clued in for 80 minutes. But I suppose to kind of to wrap up, like it is Sale this weekend. I'm actually kind of surprised it's not the Friday game. Leinster tend to go for the Friday quarter final if it's back to back weeks, especially when Sale wouldn't be bringing over a massive travelling support. But that's by the by. Um, this is probably, and I said this to Brett McKay in the 8-9 Rugby podcast, probably the one team of the eight that we didn't see being in the quarterfinals is Sale, and that is an advantage to Leinster because if they hadn't hit their straps yet, they do still have time. They'll have this and potentially say like I think it's the Ospreys they have before a potential semi-final. They've got loads of time and another decent test to just kind of scale up minutes and form and reps. And that's probably the main thing for this one. Win, obviously, but they have more time to build on this performance, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think I don't remember who said it. It was either Bernard Ackman or James Tracy said that this was the first week, the week leading into this was the first week that they had the absolute full squads um in the building, which is kind of insane. And that like still discounts. There's still a good few players who are injured and unavailable. But yeah, like if I don't necessarily want to write it off because I wouldn't write off any team really. Anything can happen as we've seen in a couple of the other games. Even in the Challenge Cup. So it's definitely not a given, but yeah, I think given that test season is done really until the summer and um everybody's in camp now, if that's them shaking off the rust, then it's not bad. Like it's it's a thing you never want to complain too much about a win and like a nine or a seven try win for certain. Like there's a lot of the teams who have to get back into to get back into shape and ship a couple of losses doing it. So like if they can keep winning, and like we had a few losses there recently, obviously Glasgow and then even the Cardiff game. So uh, like if that's them shaking it off at the start, then that's fine. And Sale obviously will require a higher level of focus again at the end of the weekend. It's a couple of tough games, like obviously Ulster then straight away. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes because the URC is nowhere near a lock at this stage. I don't even know looking at it where they expect to finish. given that Glasgow have quite a serious lead at the top of the table. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes and how much rotation is required or looked at there. But um, yeah, no, I think there's definitely space to build from here, and with the right intent. There was definitely a couple of lads who like lack of intent. It was really frustrating to watch Jamie Osborne because he played so well last week, and I was singing like hanging from the rafters, singing for that guy to play 12. And I still think it's his best position, but there was just some stuff where I was like, it was uncharacteristically, um, yeah, low effort. The intercept try where he gave up straight away. You're like, come on. It's early in the game as well. It wasn't like it was the 80th minute you'd already won or already lost. I was like, it's fairly early in the game. You could have like jumped after him or something, but yeah, it'll take a while to shake things back into place. But no, I do think they have the space to do that. And yeah, I think a serious game like um a quarterfinal always is a serious game is not a bad way to do it as well. Because if it was a series of games against nameless teams, because I won't name anybody because that'd be mean. But if it was a series of games against minnows, that it can be hard to get up for that. It shouldn't be hard to get up for a quarterfinal. It doesn't matter who it's against. We've gone out. You were asking me how many consecutive ones have we strung together. I could tell you the ones we've lost. I still remember them. So you got to take it seriously. There are good players in that sale team, and they would only love to pick up one of the biggest scalps they'll have had a shot at in a while. So yeah, it'll be a big weekend, but it should be a chance for Leicester to kind of settle into what they seem to be trying to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just had a quick glance, so I was wrong. It's not the Ospreys after Ulster, so it's Sale at home this weekend. Ulster
Yeah,
away. I think that's the Friday, if I'm right. I think
yeah,
there's a
it
Friday
is
night
the
game in
Friday. Yeah,
Belfast, so
yeah,
a little bit of a disadvantage there for Leinster. I'm sure that'll definitely be said by some pundit somewhere. Then it's Benetton away. It won't be said when they've got the advantage on Benetton a week later, and then a potential semi-final against Glasgow or Toulon. Lions at home, Ospreys at home to end the season. Like as much as, and we'll have plenty of time to be doom and gloom on the next province that we talk about, even if Leinster only hits 7 out of 10 this week, the only fear over the next couple of games is if they don't beat Ulster, that's probably top two gone. They
yeah,
can probably still get top four, especially with Bennett and Lions and Ospreys, so they can probably all rotate and beat. And then you just have that one semi final, and that's your kind of next month and month and a half, give or take. You're less, 1, 2, 3. That's your next 6 weeks right there, and obviously, leads into a potential European final. But we won't get ahead of ourselves because obviously a lot of people had booked Leinster into a final last year, and we know how that went. I will say on the podcast as on this week, I may have tipped Leinster to get to the final. May have. I also may not have. Just saying. Because some people in their comments reckon I hate Leinster. So go check out the 8 9 Rugby podcast to see exactly what I said. Rumor has it I may have said Leinster Rugby are doomed. But that may have been just to get clips. I may have also said things like 6 7. So I'm pretty sure Adam has already watched it. But from the highs of Dublin to the lows of Sandy Park as Munster crashed out of the Challenge Cup at the first hurdle and courtesy of a first half derailing of epic proportions before losing 31-21 to Exeter. I tweeted after the match, it's now officially Munster's worst European campaign. They're the only other times they'd lost 4 games in a season. One was in the pool stages, the other one they'd actually won a knockout game in the old format, and that meant they had more wins because there's more pool games. And it's a bit of a disaster, and I kind of alluded to it, but like effort, intent, like these are important factors. And I know it's nebulous, and I could, probably give you 1,000 words on how Munster's physical profile looks so much weaker than last year, and I could give you examples of certain players, certain collisions. But there has to be a moment in a team that's filled with stars, that's filled with leaders. Like your captain was Lions Player of the Year, and I'm not singling him out because of I don't like Tyke Burner and like that. I have ultimate respect for him, but we judge players, best players to the highest standard, and there has to be an ability to, football term, put your foot in the ball. To really try and wrestle this back. And first 10 minutes or whatever it was, Munster looked all right. Yes, they were defending for their lives, but you kind of expected that because um I was just about to say Bath. I'd nearly prefer if it was Bath. We know what happened when it was Munster Bath last time out. But Exeter had the ball and they had loads of possession, don't get me wrong, but you just kind of felt that okay, Munster is still in it, and then it just became try, try, try. We've all seen the failure of Boso try. Unbelievable finish. But if you go back, like Zachary Abraham's one-on-one tackle just gets steamrolled in midfield. Someone else missed the pass somewhere else. There's a moment where I think it's the end of the first half. I think it could be before Exeter's last try, where Munster are in possession. Craig Casey looks up and Lee is well used to swearing, so we can say it, but he just goes, "Oh fuck," because he sees there's no right option for him. There's literally nothing he can do. He already has the ball picked up off the ground, spins it, Munster get turned over, Exeter end up scoring, and that was just kind of that was the last try before half time. Actually, was the Faye Bosa one, and that kind of summed it up. But also at the same time, like, and I'm not to get too like we only mention effort and parochialism and heart and all that about Munster because I know that annoys some people. But ultimately, this is Munster. This is a team they've done it all. They've won in Croke Park last year. They won in La Rochelle last year. It's the bones of the same squad that, won 10 games in a row to make it to a URC semi-final. I think when someone looked into it, it is pretty much the bones of the same squad, including some of the absentees from that game. So it's not about not having the players. Some of it is coaching. Um, there was the ball that Will Reek picked off and a Ben O'Connor pass where Ben O'Connor is trying to hit Alex Kindellan. The closest man to Alex Kindellan is John Ryan, and he's 3 yards away from him. So it doesn't work. Like nothing. Hello, Puka. Nothing there is working, and it's incredibly frustrating to watch. But then when Munster, we always talk about like the flat track bully or the team who's great at running downhill. When Munster were downwind in the second half, they had 350-22s. They had Craig Casey and Jack Crowley playing with zip. Crowley scoring 16 of Munster's 21 points and had this attitude. And I used the word ignorance on Twitter. That's what it was. It was this ignorance, this refusal. It's like, we're not beaten yet. I don't care. We're not beaten yet. Now, they were ultimately. We know that. But that stone wall just, you're not going to put us down and out this easily. And if Munster had that across the board, maybe they wouldn't have been in that mess. But I suppose, David, to kind of bring you in there, like it was a tale of two halves as well. I mentioned this before we started. Exeter scored 31 points the first half playing with the wind, scored 0 points the second half. Munster scored 21 points the second half playing with the wind, 0 points the first half. Both sides had one gilt edge opportunity missed. So it was kind of a tale of two halves as well. But obviously, if it went the other way and if it was 21-31 and Munster racked up a lead, we'd always frame it towards the loser, but 31-0 down in a game where you have to be so smart in that first half, it's kind of unforgivable, isn't it?
It's really infuriating, and like it's a funny one as well when you have like a Leinster supporter in me, and then also my mom who watching at the same time, who were feeling a lot of sympathy for Munster because the two, as you said, 31 Exeter in the first, and then Munster's was it 21 in the second. Like that is a 10-point gap, and Exeter got two intercept tries off Munster. That's got to be galling because at some level you got to feel like God, if we hadn't done that, the wind was the difference. And I don't think the wind was entirely the difference because, as black and white as those two halves look, there's also the factor that when Exeter went into the second half, they had a 31-point lead. It's hard to maintain intensity when you've got that much of a lead. Um, and then Munster's, as you said, never say die attitude. And like fair fucks to Jack Crowley, like it's really hard being that player all the time. Like it's a lot to carry at the best of times. That's why Tyke Byrne looks tired all of the time because it is him in so many teams. But like Jack Curley's final, and it's got to be really frustrating as well at a personal level that like Jack Curley's try at the end or his final try of the game was a brilliant. Like it was such a phenomenal try. Like it was like a really really class piece of individual skill to score it, and he dots it down and then is like furiously running back so he can drop kick it over the bar so he can go again. Like he doesn't get to enjoy that moment. Even looking back on the game, he won't get to enjoy that moment. It'll probably make it the highlight reels, and people watching it back will go, "Why does he look so annoyed?" Like it's got to be frustrating to have to be that player all the time because it is a 15-man game, it's a 15-player game, and one player cannot win it alone, no matter what they try to do. But I think that the ultimate lesson for Munster is that You can't go 31 points down and still expect to win a game. With the best will in the world, with the best intent in the second half, with the wind on your side, with a player like Crowley, anti-burn. I thought it was funny that they were the try scorer. It was like it couldn't have been more on the nose about who this team is reliant on than through the try scorers. And it's not like they were the only players playing well, but it was just kind of quite apt that's how that bore out. But yeah, I guess it's the lesson is anything. It's you can't go that far behind and still win. Like it's unless you're Scotland playing against England in that mad match a few years ago. Like it's not going to happen for you. So I think there'll be frustration because even going into this game, I think at the outset of the four provincial games, this felt like the one that was going to be the hardest to win. Like we felt like Ulster and Connacht should probably win their games. Leinster were definitely favourite to win their game, but Exeter have been having a good season and they've been playing well.
Third
Um,
in the Premiership. Like they're not a bad team.
and it's in Sandy Park. Like it was always going to be a hard uphill battle. So, and that, like at 31-0 down, it didn't feel close. But I think in hindsight, if certain coins landed slightly differently, it probably feels like it could have been so much closer game. Even that last line kick from Crowley, like he had to go for distance. There was no other choice in that moment. It's very frustrating that it didn't find touch, but he didn't have a choice. He had to try and get it as close to the five as he could, because there wasn't time to mess around. And you just think like one or two things go the other way and it's a different story. But I think that'll be a frustration ongoing for Munster and that's been a few games this season. One or two things go a different way and it's a different story. And you can take a positive from that to go, we're not that far off. But it's got to be frustrating to be like, well, if we're consistently just a little bit off, that starts to add up to a lot more than you're really comfortable with when you look back on the season.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's across the board, isn't it? Like you need to have I think we may have discussed this before, but you need to have a calling card. You need to have something. You need to have something to go back on. It's like if this isn't going right, this is our thing. Their line out, the success rate is fine, but they've no mauls. That kind of mitigates it. Scrum is a mess. Like it genuinely is. First two penalties of this game were scrum penalties against Munster. Their attack looks so overly complicated. Like there is, and I understand some of it is you're losing physical collisions, like the likes of John Ryan and Jeremy Luckman and Lee Barron. I know just use the front row for instance. They're being blown off collisions. It's so hard to get go forward then. But like even, they're playing hero ball at times. Like Tom Farrell goes to this offload, and it was in that 20-minute period where Munster didn't score. Like if they score between, try one on 49 minutes and try two on 68, it's a very different game. Like it is. It's a very different game. And this happened against Bath as well, where Bath had the game won. Munster were knocking on the line, knocking on the line. They couldn't get over. It eventually leads to, I think, get a Bath get a turnover into their own post, or they rolled them onto their back and held them up or something like that. And that cost Munster potentially getting a point in that game. That could have been the difference, getting out of their pool eventually when it came to. And it's how different they are insofar as when they have momentum, they're not going 7, 14, 21. But on the flip side, you know, um, the first try that Exeter scores on 13 minutes, their second one's on 21. Then they get two tries in the last 10 minutes of the half. Like they're reeling off quick succession scores. Like it's bang, 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 bang. And that has happened to Munster against the Sharks. It happened against Bath. It happened against the Stormers in that kind of first loss. And now they're four from their last 14. And in that run, they've beaten a rotated Gloucester, Ospreys, which a game that gets better in hindsight because that was a rotated Munster over in Bridgend. But they beat the Ospreys, they beat the Dragons, and they beat Zebre. And it's really like disheartening to watch at this point, and it is given similar vibes to what we would have said about Ulster last year at this point of the season. I know we didn't have a this podcast this time last season, but it would have been similar about Ulster insofar as we all remember after like that Bordeaux game that they had in the round of 16. That was their last great performance the last season. They didn't really bring much else to the party after that, and you do hope for Munster that Loftus wasn't their last great performance this season because Munster simply cannot afford to be finishing 14th in a 16-team league, or I think Ulster finished 14th, could have been 13th in the end, but like they just can't. Like there's too much quality there, and like as it's funny how at the start of the season we'd have probably said Munster will go as far as Casey and Crowley can bring them. The last 2 weeks has shown them those guys are setting the floor. nearly. They're making sure that they can stay competitive in games that maybe they don't have any right to. Maybe we look at this Munster squad and we look at front row and Tyburn wasn't at his best, and probably worth mentioning Edwin Dogbo went 80 minutes here. For all the talk about his
Yeah,
fitness, all the talk about his impact, 80 minutes, brutish carries. He was all over the place. He was absolutely brilliant in this game. Probably the only Munster forward that put his hand up to say, "Look at me, look at what I can do." And you know, backs, I look at the same. I'm actually just reading the stats here because I was looking for Edwin Adogbo stats. Daft Jenkins, 30 tackles. Um,
yeah,
Edwin Adogbo is Munster's top tackler with 14. Eight extra players had more than that. But I know that's the nature of the two halves. But now you look at Munster's run into the season, none of those games are guaranteed losses. Like none of them. Their toughest game is Ulster at home, and Ulster's road form hasn't been brilliant, and they do look a little bit off the pace. We'll get onto them in a minute. Um, they've got Connacht away, which probably is the closest thing that you'd book into a loss. Can Munster win their next four? They got Benetton away and they got Lions at home. Absolutely, they can. On paper,
mm,
they can. They should. They have a halfback pairing. They've got a world-class second row. They've got one of the best eights in the URC the last couple of seasons. Admittedly, not his best season. Two brilliant centres. That should be enough. That spine should be enough. But something is wrong stylistically, and I put a lot of it down to attack, but I put a lot of it down to leadership as well, because ultimately, you know, you have you have to take some ownership as well. Like it's on every single person in that playing and the playing side of the business, as we kind of referred to with the when we talked about the redundancies. But before we move on to continuing Challenge Cup, I was going to say two Challenge Cup, Jesus. Don't want to insult Munster even more. But before we move on, just make sure to subscribe to get all the latest content here in the Low Day and Line channel. As you know, there's the URC run-in, there's Champions Cup, there is the start of the Women's Six Nations. The Women's Rugby Treehouse will be your home for that, but also special announcement of a very special podcast. I may have oversold it now. Myself and David will be joined by two special guests to preview Ireland's run in the Women's Six Nations. That's coming up this coming Thursday. Yes, Thursday. I'm. It's a bank holiday weekend. Everyone knows the way it is. You don't know what day of the week it is.
yeah. Time
Um,
is real.
yeah, time is a social construct. If you can share the show with one friend or leave a comment, it makes all the difference. Do let us know what you think, good, bad, or indifferent. And also, as we've called out before, we are looking for hosts for provincial podcasts set to drop next season. So leave a comment down below if you're interested. Maybe message myself or the show on Twitter, or if you know of someone who has a provincial podcast who might be interested in bringing it up under the Global Gain Line umbrella, we'd be more than this happy to give it a listen and give it a whirl. But back from Sandy Park, and we go into the victory column. That seemed really mean. That was not what I intended at all. But Ulster needed a late TMO intervention to pip the Ospreys 28-24 in stormy Belfast. I should have just read it all out. It wouldn't have sounded as bad. David, if there's ever a definition of got out alive, it's kind of this one, because Ulster, when Nick Timoney scored, and I tweeted it, and someone took the piss out of me afterwards. That looked like game over. On we go, on to next week. Everyone starts following what's happening in Kingston Park. Instead, they let the Ospreys back into it. There's a penalty try. There should have been a try to win it. We'll go on to that in just a second. So they kind of just survived. And shout out to Adam, he's not with us this evening. He was at the game. Kind of got out alive as well because there was a bit of a storm there. So a very underlying trend of this game.
Yeah, when Adam finally texted us in the hours after the game, it was just to say, I think I have frostbite. So
Adam
bless him.
Lathan, frostbite kid, without
He's
the
he's
dodgy past.
Yeah, he's recovered just enough to hold the pint of Beamish, God bless him. But no, yeah, no, they did well to get out of there. It was crazy. Like it's the most frustrating thing as a fan, as a coach, I'm sure as a player in hindsight, to have a game that you really should be done and dusted with. And also we're good for it. Like this is one of us the best seasons Ulster have put together. They played a lot of good rugby. Their Ireland players have come back, should be coming back full of confidence. They should be full of confidence. We've said in years gone by when Ulster found themselves in Challenge Cup that it's a competition they should be challenging for, and they should. They're good enough to go deep in it. Um, Whether or not they get to the end and there's a French team or maybe an Exeter waiting who have other ideas, that's another thing. But like round of 16, there's no doubt, there's no question they should be going past this. Um, And it's just it's so incredibly frustrating how close they came to throwing it away. And I almost couldn't believe it. Like when it happened in the moment, it looks like Ospreys have just pipped them at the end, and it's stunning because it's like so close to the end. It felt like this had to be just done. This was like finished, and there was no route back for Ospreys. And credit to them, they dug in and went for it. But Ulster will have to look at themselves and go, how did we let it get that close? I thought they were lucky to get out of it. I do think it was right. Like I saw the slow down there. I was like, it does come forward out of the hands. Just about. I mean, it wasn't clear and obvious. And I think there's a debate over whether or not the TMO is supposed to come in for things not being clear and obvious. Or if that things should be clear and obvious for them to come in. At the end of the day, I did think it was a marginally forward pass. And the fact that it was a game deciding try, I don't know if that should affect whether or not it gets looked at.
It
Um,
it it the fact that it's a try should probably overrule Anthem, so it should probably always get reviewed. But I don't know. For me, it's one like when I seen it live, I was like, I think that's forward. When I
Mm.
watched the replay, I thought, but his hands are flat. Like he's running, his hands are flat. It just naturally drifts. But once you get into slow motion and I don't know. I not
Slow motion's very tricky, you
yeah,
know.
it is. And far from me to have sympathy for the Ospreys. They're not, there's some very nice Ospreys fans out there who listen to this, don't get me wrong, but like some of them not so much. But no, it's tough for them. Like it
It
genuinely
is.
is,
It's
but like for
brutal.
Ulster, it's like if Ulster go on and win the Challenge Cup, we were talking about this moment as being, you know, the start of it.
Yeah, it isn't it like I think I felt less sympathy because in the although they haven't in the opposite direction, but in the Ireland in the God no in the Leinster Edinburgh game, Bernard Jackman did it
Same thing
first.
apparently.
Bernard Jackman did it first. In the Leinster Edinburgh game, Josh Van der Fleur's first try was ruled out for lost four over the line by like the smallest of margins in the stadium. I was giving out about Luke Pierce a lot. The angles in the stadium did him no favors. On watching it back, there is very small amount of separation before he slams it to the ground. So technically it's ruled out. But it's another one of those things that like if you don't have super slow motion cameras, you'd never spot this. If this was an AIL game, they'd both have been tries. And it wouldn't have materially affected Leinster's game. It would have changed this result. So I suppose the debate is should the consequential nature of the try matter? I would say absolutely not. It shouldn't matter either way. But the fact that it is a try is probably, if you're going to look at anything, they're going to look at this. They want to make sure they got it right. It was marginally forward, but that is still forward. And I think it was probably fair. But I think it's also fair to say that Ulster got out of the jail free completely. Like it was an Ospreys mistake rather than an Ulster good play that ended up deciding the game. And I think given how Ulster had played up till then, it'd be really frustrating that that's what it came down to because it shouldn't have.
Yeah.
They should have been able to seal this one themselves. So yeah, no, I
I'm
think
I'm
they'll still be
starting
frustrated.
I'm starting to think about omens because like Ulster had a game postponed in Amsterdam in January that not only was it postponed, they got the full 5 points out of it.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to like don't get me wrong, there's no EPCR conspiracy to give Ulster their first trophy in 20 years. There's nothing like that, but there starts to be that little bit of, oh, maybe there is, something here. Maybe there is a kind of, maybe the stars are aligning for them. And like it is better to be lucky than to be good. But they do take on La Rochelle this weekend. And La Rochelle, although they squeaked past Newcastle in the end, they had like, I think they were like 50% off the tee. Obviously, another stormy night on Saturday night in Newcastle, the same it would have been as in Belfast. But this is this is tough. Like this is tough. No matter where you play La Rochelle, this is a tough fixture. And I think, like obviously, you know about all about La Rochelle because being a Leinster fan. I won't even bring it up because it's too much at this stage. But it's a big game for Ulster. And now like they may be without Nathan Doak. I thought he was brilliant on Saturday night again. Um. Like we'll get onto the Ireland squad later on, later on in the season, but it's starting to take shape that he is very much banging down the door to not to be a starter, and I don't even think it's clear and obvious daylight between himself and Craig Casey in any way, but he's certainly banging down the door to make sure that this is the three scrum halves he brings to the next World Cup. There is no doubt about it. and I'd firmly believe that. But he may not be there, and Rob Herring may not be there, and there's always that fear that Ulster, when Herring and Henderson aren't on the field, who weren't on the field for the last 20 minutes, that just leader wise, they just seem to drop off a small bit. We've seen this in years gone by. When they're not there, can just, again, put your foot in the ball, as we kind of said about Munster, just take the sting out of a team. They've been very good at that. Alan O'Connor as well, who's of course now the forwards coach with the Ireland women, but that will be Friday night, and we'll preview that in just a moment. But we'll finish on Galway on a very good Friday for Connacht. I know that's a bad pun, as they ransacked the Sharks 29 points to 12 to advance to the quarterfinals. And it's so easy to look at this scoreline and think, oh, one-way traffic, it was this, that, and the other. For me, for the 60 minutes that this game was in the melting pot, I was very impressed with Connacht and how resilient they were. They didn't concede a try. Firstly, that was four penalties that the Sharks had, and they kicked one fairly long range penalty, two arguably, one fairly long range penalty as well in that. So Connacht were a real shutout, and I'll try and pull it up here on Rugby Pass. And amongst them, chief amongst them, Seamus Hurley Langton again was absolutely brilliant. I kind of hit everything that moved type defensive performance. And just I check it, the Sharks had four entries to Connacht's 22. They scored 3 points from it, so 0.7. So they had nothing. On the flip side, Connacht only had six entries and scored 4.8 points per entry. So they were resilient, resolute. And I think that's one thing that's starting to show. I think it's probably the one thing that got forgotten about the short Lancaster era is it's built on defense. It's built on, a great kicking game. Connacht are starting to have all these things. And as well as that, we're starting to see, yes, Seamus Harry-Langton's still a young man, still a returnee. Will he stay? Will he go? Is the question. But not only him, Matthew Devine's been excellent. Thought Shane Jennings and John Devine were both excellent as well. And yeah, a little bit of personal bias there, don't get me wrong. Thought that Darren Murray was brilliant. Bundy is back, maybe not at his best, but he's fairly close to it. And there's someone else that I had made note of while watching the game. I'm just trying to check my notes here. Yeah, Sam Elo and Billy Bowen. How could I forget them? Like, tough night at the scrum. I don't think they were as solid or as kind of resolute as you'd hope in a European knockout game. But considering who they're going up against, Oxen Shade, Vincent Koch, that they did more than well enough. And I suppose, David, the one thing I will ask you is, kind of feels like the time is now for Connacht as well. They're on the opposite side of the draw, but because the Dragons won in Stade Francais, we have a situation where Connacht are 80 minutes, a famous 80 minutes in Montpellier, and it would take a huge ask away from a semi-final against the Zebra or the Dragons. And what an opportunity it is for Connacht to make their first European final now.
It's huge. It is absolutely massive. Like it's great. I mean, credit to Dragons. Like that was Zebra, I think, are used to swimming in these waters, but Dragons to pip Stade Francais was that was phenomenal. Like anyone who didn't watch that should go back and watch it because that was pretty class. And yeah, for a region and a country that's struggling, that was brilliant from them. But Connacht, no, I thought it was such a mature performance from Connacht. Like it's always hard going into the half down or the second half down. They didn't let that phase them. I was really concerned in that first half watching John Smith because he's not a player I really knew of before that, but this was a guy who was stepping up and slotting penalty goals from basically anywhere that they could get a shot off. And that to me seemed dangerous because that's how you win knockout games. You just take your points so you can get them. And I thought if this guy can keep doing this, they're gonna build a lead that Connacht aren't gonna be able to catch. Um, but they didn't give him anything. He had one shot at goal in the second half and he missed. And for Connacht to go 80 minutes without conceding a single try against the Sharks, who, like, for all their frailties, can score. Like that's a team that has Makazole and Pimpy in it. Like they are more than capable of scoring tries, and Connacht just completely shut them out. And then were able to, after just scoring the one try in the first half, come back in the second half, score three more, and then take the penalty kick on, I think it was the 69th minute, to extend that lead out to to three scores. Like it was just a really mature performance, as well as playing brilliant rugby. They played sensibly, and their game management, their structure was very good. I thought Kyle Ford, who I hadn't really thought of as a 13, but I thought he had a great performance in that position. It's an interesting one as well because obviously they have Bundyaki will still be there until the World Cup, and they have Hugh Gavin as well. So for Ford to be able to play 12 and 13, and obviously he can cover 10 as well if he needs to. That's a very versatile, very useful player. It'd be interesting to see how he pairs with Kieran Frawley next season. Um, and yeah, Hurley Langton was brilliant. I think their stated aim is to keep him around. I think his stated aim is to he'll qualify for Ireland in like 2 years or something like that. So
Yep.
yeah, hopefully that continues on there. But yeah, no, I just thought it was class from Connacht and like well rewarded. Like their new stand is lovely, and they seem to be doing a reasonably good job of filling it. I think it wasn't entirely full, but I think that was actually due to the fact that for some reason they didn't have the entire thing open for sale. At least that was the feedback I got from some Connacht supporters. So they seem to be doing a pretty good job of getting people in there, and it looks great, and the atmosphere seems class, and God bless them, they're actually rewarding that as well. Like it's now six in a row. That's not something that Connacht supporters would be super used to. And yeah, it's going to be intoxicating. Montpellier will be tough. There's no two ways
Yeah.
about that, and it'd be tough enough even just to get there. But yeah, it's such a gilt-edged opportunity because yeah, like you said, 80 minutes away from Zebra and Dragons, and then you wouldn't really take those two for granted either. I know it'll be. I think it will be at home, but it depends.
It's Zebra
If
at
it's if
home or
it's
no,
Zebra away or Dragons at
Zebra
home,
away or Dragons at home. Yeah.
yeah, it's cross that bridge when you get to it, obviously. But yeah, no, yeah, they should, and like this game seems to show that they are up for it. So it's 1 week to turn around. It's an away trip, but Connacht have a history of putting in really good performances. I remember them going to Racing a few years ago, and so nearly pipping them as well. Um, so like I think it's there for them if they want to go for it, and I think they should because I think they can, and I think it'd be a great thing for Connacht. I think it'd
Yeah.
be fantastic.
If I'm not mistaken, that Racing game in Paris was the day of the COVID delayed All Ireland hurling final of 2020. And I'm starting to seriously question where my memory kicks in. I remember that and I don't remember other things. But to kind of jump into the previews as we do at the end of every show, Montpellier Connacht, we may as well start with it. We can come back to La Rochelle, Ulster in just a minute. Some of the players that Montpellier had on display at the weekend, Adam Beard, Lenny Nuki, Diego Miotti, Arthur Franson, Gabriel Ngandebe, John Etchgiri, Mohammed Hawas, Billy Vunipola, Ali Price, and of course that famous Scottish fullback has been with them as well for quite some time. Um, no comment there, but I suppose the big thing for Connacht, well, as someone who's in the general vicinity in January, the hardest part I think for Connacht is getting through Marseille Airport without losing the will to live. But apart from that, like this is a huge opportunity. But as I named there, Montpellier are doing well for a reason. They have a very strong team. They're very well coached. But I suppose David Connacht pushed them all the way before. So if you were to call it, and we lock in our official predictions at the end of the week, where David is still the leader on that, if you were to call it this moment, are you kind of feeling I'm not going to say green wave because that would be, you know, infringement on something on a trademark. But can you feel that bit of momentum behind Connacht? Do you think they're going to make it seven in a row?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think they will. I think they'll pull it off. I think they're trending in the right direction. They're plucky enough. Montpellier are fifth in the top 14, so just on the edge of La Barrage. So yeah, no, I think they can do it. I think Montpellier will make the mistake. That team as well will make the mistake of not taking Connacht seriously enough, and I think Connacht um will be able to with Hurley Langton and Ford running and with Sam Gilbert kicking. I think Connacht will have just enough. It's going to be a heart attack of a game, but I think Connacht might have just enough to come out on top.
Yeah, no, I agree. The big game of the weekend, I was going to say arguably of the entire two tournaments. It's not now because of the way the draw unfolded. But Ulster against La Rochelle on Friday night, clashing with Bath against Northampton. I have thoughts on that. I only have a certain amount of screens in the house. I can't watch two matches plus the golf. That's absolutely,
Mm.
it's absolutely preposterous. But you kind of feel like we kind of talked ourselves into it. This is a huge opportunity for Ulster. If they win here, that yes, they'll still have to play like Exeter or Benetton, which is still a very tough semi-final. Benetton will be away as well. But you just feel like everything is starting to point in Ulster's direction this tournament, isn't it?
It should be. I think that the final 20 minutes of that Ospreys game, hopefully that's a wake-up call. Because other than that, it should be. This should be there for them to grip. They are definitely on the harder side of the draw. La Rochelle are a team having a fairly atrocious season, but they are just good enough to be dangerous. And I think, it'd be on Ulster's head if they didn't take them seriously. And then whichever of Benetton or Exeter they end up having to face after that will also be tough. But Ulster should win this game. They should. But I think it'll be incumbent upon them to not have a slip up like they almost did against the Ospreys, because I think if they do that twice, they won't get away with that 2 weeks in a row.
We've a mini Super Saturday in Irish rugby, of course, with England against Ireland in the opening round of the Women's Six Nations. We will discuss that on Thursday, as we said. But the final game of the weekend, from a provincial point of view, is Leinster against Sale Sharks Saturday, 5:30. Of course, all these European Cup games live on Premier Sports. David, we have to look. I'll say it because you can't. Leinster have to be the overwhelming favourites for this game. They should win this game. They don't have no reason to fear the Premiership teams. I think you have to go back to, I have it here right in front of me. You have to go back. They've one loss. Sorry, obviously they lost Northampton last year. They've one loss in the last 5 seasons, 6 seasons against Premiership teams.
Saracens,
Saracens
even.
2020, and then obviously last year against Northampton. So it doesn't happen that often, do you
No.
know? And you kind of just feel like Leinster will win. Are you confident?
Oh, we have to be. Like, realistically, there's no way. That's Arsenal's game. It's such a weird one. It's always funny going back to watch those games because it was a COVID August 2020. What a weird time. And unfortunately, they had us cooked in the scrum, and Elliot Daly can kick goals from anywhere within 60 meters. So they just slotted pretty much 25 points from penalties and I think one try, and we were cooked. But um, yeah, Sailor seventh from 10 in the or seventh in the table in the Premiership. They're 3 from 12 in terms of wins. Like, there's no real question about it. Like, it's impressive that they've gotten this far in the competition, but and I like they won't be they'd love the opportunity to take on Leinster. Like, to find themselves in a semi-final would be insane, but to do it by knocking out Leinster would be brilliant. And there's just enough good English players in that squad to give it a rattle. But from a Leinster point of view, there can't be any question. Like, this has to be a continuation of the second half against Edinburgh, and Leinster just have to be going out with the intent to win and win well.
Yeah, no, they do. And I do think if I was to lock any game this weekend, it would be Leinster against Sale. Obviously, always bet on the Red Roses in the Six Nations, but maybe not this week. Just for our own headspace. But David, thank you very much for joining me this evening. As I said, we'll be back on Thursday night. Gotta write this up. On Thursday night for our Women's Six Nations preview. And then, of course, next week to reflect on Women's Six Nations, plus a bumper weekend of provincial action. Will we finally see an unofficial clean sweep where three provinces win with one not playing? Who knows? Maybe we will. Until next time, I've been your host, Caolán Scully, David Cordy alongside me, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.